Alright, let's get started on this week's application assignment. It is case 1 in your MIS cases book. So actually on page 1. In order to complete this assignment, you will need to grab the Milligan 4.xlsx file from doc sharing. So before you even begin, please go to eCollege and log into log into your course, go to doc sharing and download that file. You'll notice that file looks a bit different than the file in the book. The values don't seem to match up with what you're seeing in the book, and that's only because of how it's sorted. So let's go ahead and sort this the same as what we're seeing in the book, and I'll sort it in ascending. Let me move this so you can see it. And it's asking me if I want to expand the selection, and I'm going to say yes because I don't want it to just sort that column. I want it to sort the entire worksheet. So we'll say yes. Will be sorted. Sorry, it looks like mine. I may have already had already sorted it, but all right. Now that we're sorted, we're going to start with the assignment. Mr. Milligan has backyard storage kits, and if you read the case, you'll understand that he's trying to create an inventory tracking system and collect a little more data as far as their sales, average sales, days in inventory, and so forth. So they ask us to create several new columns. Those columns are listed on page 3. And they also provide the formulas necessary to complete the calculations for those columns. So rather than me creating those in this video, I'm going to skip ahead to try to keep the video linked down. So I have a sheet where I've already created the columns and plugged in the calculations that they provided. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to format these so that they match up with what would make sense. So for instance, cost of inventory, I'm going to go ahead and drag that formula down. It's going to populate those, but I want that to be a currency, and actually I'm going to choose currency here. Next I'm going to do the same for annual sales, cost of goods. Most of these are going to be currency items. Now, gross margin ratio is going to be a percentage, and so is the markup percentage. I'm going to scroll across here. We have the inventory turnover. Doesn't look like we need all those decimal places. Days in inventory. And later we'll get to the percentage of total sales. Alright, so these 3 columns here, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to format as a currency. I'm also going to take these columns here, and we're going to make those a percentage. And let's go ahead and add 2 decimal places to those. Granted, I'm using the ribbon format up here, but you can also right click on it and format your cells. Inventory turnover, I think I want these to just have 2 decimal places. And then percentage of total sales, we'll get to that in a second, and that will also be a percentage, but before we can create that calculation, we've got to create some totals. But I'm going to format this spreadsheet a little bit further. He asks us to prepare this for a presentation in the case example. So we are going to um, merge these cells and go ahead and give it a title. And if you want to wait to do this to the very end to do all your formatting, that's fine, because we will be actually adding more cells to it. So you do it at the end, you won't have to make the adjustments to that later. Alright, and for this one we actually wanted to have the current date in there always, so we're going to create a date call in our formula up here, so it's just now, and it's going to pull the current date. Now we may want to format that date so that it looks a little bit different. Again, you can format cell, and it's a number, it's a date, and you can choose how you want that date to display. I just want it to show a date. I don't want it to show the time and everything. So we've got the date. Actually, I want to use a little more formal date than that. So I'm going to go back to it, and we're going to choose this format here. So October 7th, 2014. Anytime you open the report, it should show the most recent date. Alright, I'm going to zoom out slightly so you can see. Hopefully you can still see these items. I've created columns down here for total, average, minimum, and maximum. And again, in the case example, he wants to know the minimum and maximum of unit cost, unit sales, as well as most of the fields in here. We also want to pull the total of cost of average inventory, annual sales, and cost of goods sold, and annual gross profit. So we've already learned from previous examples the easiest way to total is to use the auto sum feature. It'll grab what's above it, and now we've got the total in there.
Once you have the auto sum of one field, you can actually carry that across to multiple fields. So if we're wanting to auto sum all of those, and this number was too big, that's why it shows this character. So I'm just going to double click H. It's going to spread out. We'll see the full number there, and we see all the sums. So we've got our totals filled out, and I'll go ahead and bold those for now. And next we're going to work on our average. So to create the average, we want to know the average of basically most all of the columns except for average on hand. That's already an average. Average unit sale per year, and then some of the later on fields. But let's start with we're going to start with the average for cost average inventory. So to create this, we're going to go up to our functions, say equal. We're going to choose, or this is one way that you can do it, average. And inside of that, to create a reference, we're just going to drag those fields in. It automatically inserts them, hit enter, and now we've got the average. Again, we want to pick up the average for several of the fields, I think all the way across to markup percentage, if I remember right. So drag that across, it's automatically creating these as currency, and we want those to be percentage because we're averaging percentages, and we also want to make those two decimal places there. Alright, so we've got our averages set up. Now it's time to do minimum. Let's pull the minimum of the unit cost. Again, we'll go up here, equal, min, put it in the parentheses, get inside the parentheses. If I can click inside there, or use your mouse arrow to get in there. Select that column, hit enter. Now you're pulling the minimum, and I'm going to drag it out so that we're pulling the minimum for unit cost, unit sale price. Let's see, I think he also wants us to pull the minimum of cost inventory. So again, equal, min. I'm going to go back one to get in there. Select all of those and hit enter. Again, we can drag the minimum all the way across. I think he wants that to go all the way across. And again, we've got to correct our percentages, and we'll add 2 decimal places. We'll correct these as well. We're going to turn this into just a number. And let's see, now we need to do the maximum. The maximum is going to be very similar, except it'll be equal max. And you can also select in this field here. I'm typing in a lot of these values, but you can just select a function over there. Same with the date option that we typed in earlier. And hit enter. Oops. It brought up a formula builder, by the way, just off screen. So we could choose max and choose our or select our range. Oops, I missed. There we go. Hit enter. Does the same thing. And I'll close that out, and we'll continue to use our max that I'm going to go ahead and change. I guess we never made these a currency here, so let's go ahead and correct that as well. So we'll change those to currency. We need to do the same down here. Currency. Alright, so now we'll do the max, and I'm just going to type it this time. Max, parentheses, click inside of it, select all my fields, insert, then we're going to carry this across just under all the mins. Again, we're going to have to correct some of these. Convert this to a number. Convert these two to percentages. Add 2 decimal places. And we've got most of our base data set up.
And then we also need to add the decimal places for this as well, so that it is 2 decimal places. From here, if we were to try to copy this down, we're going to run into an issue, because it's going to try to increment H40. You'll notice the one below it, it's H41, and we basically always want to use H40, which is our total for annual sales. So what we can do, we'll go back up to that, is we're going to put a dollar sign in front of the H and a dollar sign in front of the 40 so that it locks onto that cell. And now when we copy it down, you'll see that it pulls all those percentage values down. So now we can continue on with setting up our min and max at the bottom as well. So min is already set up. Looks like max we still need to. So bring that across.
Okay, now we're ready to start answering some of the information specification questions that Mr. Milligan is asking of us. There are 9 questions. Mr. Milligan wants a markup of at least 30% on all items. Which items have markups less than 30%? Now I'll help you get started on some of these, but I'm going to let you answer most of these, but I'll do a couple select ones that you may need a little more assistance on. According to the application exercise instructions, I want you to create spreadsheets for each question. So question 1 will be I can't remember exactly how I actually have you listing it. ISQ1. So ISQ1, and you'll create one for each one of your questions all the way across to 9. Anyway, we'll start with just that right there. So I'm going to go back to my sheet, and if you remember in our previous example how we would filter data, we would select the data that we want to filter. So I'm going to select all of my data here. I'm going to choose a basic table layout. And the filters will probably come on. If they're not on, then you can turn them on up here through the filters. And we want to filter the markup percentage. So I click on that filter, and I'm going to choose the bottom 10, or I'm sorry, I'm going to choose less than 0.3 because we're doing percentage, so the actual value is less than 0.3 or 30%. So we filtered and picked up the items that were less than 30%, and let's copy that table.
Now we'll move on to question 2. So let's go back to our original sheet. And like I said, I'm not going to do all of the information specification questions for you, but I'll get you started. I'm going to do question 2 and question 7. Let's remove our previous filter. So under the markup percentage, let's click on that filter and clear filter. If you don't do that, then you'll be filtering content that's already been filtered. In question number 2, it asks us, in terms of annual sales, which item has the lowest annual sale? So we're going to filter on annual sales. So I'm going to click on annual sales. It'll pull up our filter box. We want to find the lowest, so we'll choose bottom 10 and change that to 1. So we have the lowest item, and we will select that data, copy it, and paste that into ISQ sheet or worksheet. So our content's in there. Now I'll also show you, and we're going to kill the filter when we come back in here. Clear filters. So our data's back. Now we're going to try to find, let's see, number 7. Mr. Milligan wants a column chart that compares the top 5 selling items. Based on annual sales, prepare the column chart for Mr. Milligan. So all he wants to know now is the top 5 selling. We'll select our data here. So the top 5 selling items, and this is going to be based on annual sales. So annual sales, again, we'll use the top 10 filter, and we'll make it 5. So now we've got our data. We can right click, copy that. We'll paste that into ISQ7. And now we need to build the bar chart from this. Now he doesn't need all of this information in the bar chart. Probably all we really need is the description and the annual sales. So if you highlight the description items in that column and then hold down on Command on a Mac and Shift on a PC, or you might have to hit Control actually and select the individual ones. Just make sure that you're only selecting that data. You could also just remove these rows if you wanted to. So we could delete these rows. But in any case, the only data we really need is in these 2 columns. So we're going to create a chart by going to Charts, Columns. I'm going to choose a 3D cluster. We've created a chart here. You can modify that if you'd like by using different quick chart layouts, and you can even alter the colors. You can come up with a professional look to it. And that's how you will answer ISQ7. Now keep in mind that on this assignment you don't have to do the test your design and case deliverables. You will end on page 4 after completing the questions or answering these questions to 1 through 9. So hopefully that'll get you going for this week, and let me know if you have any further questions. Thank you.